Hi, I'm Femi OK and you're in the stream. Today, Kenya's security crackdown is sweeping up and shipping out Somali refugees and undocumented immigrants. Is it racial profiling or a targeted operation to keep Kenya safe? Filling in for Malika Bilal, who is out on vacation, our digital guest producer, Omar Bida. You know, when Malika sits in this seat, she often says, I love these kind of shows. What kind of show is it? I think she might say that today.
The kind of show that is actually pitched by our community,
right.
And indeed it was actually pitched directly to her. Take a look at my screen here. Abdesalam had tweeted Malika saying, I'm following the Eastleigh Nairobi Somali arrests. Here's the hashtag Justice for Eastleigh. And we had another tweet later on, East African Star, who said to Malika, maybe you should talk about the Kasarani concentration camp. Of course, East African Star here is referring to the stadium where thousands of Somalis are currently being held in Kenya. And anytime we do a community pitch show, it invariably ends up, we get an avalanche of tweets and a lot of community engagement. So it is pretty exciting as far as that is concerned. Of course, for those of you at home, we also want you to be part of this conversation. So you can still tweet in using the hashtag AJStream and we'll get to your tweets. And if you've got a story, idea or some feedback for us, don't be shy. Go to our website at stream.aljazeera.com. and you can send us a video. It's so easy to do that with your comments, your questions, your show idea. You just click on record. You allow the little widget to actually record you. It doesn't take very long, and you too can be in the stream.
I'm Aziza Ahmed. I'm a law professor at Northeastern University School of Law, and I'm in the stream.
Nairobi's Kasarani Stadium has transformed into a holding pen for around about 4,000 people. They've been detained in a security operation officials say is targeting, and I quote here, anyone outside the law, end of quote. Police are sweeping up suspects in Eastleigh, and that's an ethnic Somali neighborhood authorities say is a haven for the Somali-based armed group Al-Shabaab. Kenya's Somali community, though, says that it's the victim of ethnic profiling, claiming they're being exploited by police and treated like terrorists. Hundreds of refugees and undocumented immigrants are being sent to northern camps or home to Somalia, raising concerns for their rights and safety. So today we're going to look at the Kenyan government's latest attempt to keep its citizens safe. Joining us from Nairobi, we have Farah Malim. He's a former Deputy Speaker of Kenya's National Assembly. Political analyst Moses Kuria. Abdi Wahab Sheikh Abdi Samad is a history professor with Kenyatta University. And on the phone from Nairobi, Masood Murinyi is spokesman for the Administration Police of Kenya. We also asked two government representatives to join us. They agreed, but they dropped out literally just a couple of hours before this program began. But we still got a very good conversation. So gentlemen, welcome to the stream. It's great to have you here. Let's get right to the conversation. I'm going to start here with, these were the images that we saw in Al Jazeera just a couple of weeks ago. These were people from the Eastleigh area of Nairobi. They've been scooped up. They're in a courtyard here. This is a prison courtyard, and it looks like the conditions are not good. Let me turn to Farah. What did you hear about this situation when it started just a couple of weeks ago in April? Because these pictures are very dramatic.
The condition of the people who are held in that place is very deplorable. As a matter of fact, it only reminds you of a few cases in this day and age. One that comes into mind, putting people in that kind of an enclosure like livestock, like animals or cows for that matter, is the one in the old former Yugoslavia, when the Serbs had concentrated people in Srebrenica and many of the cities in what basically was Bosnia. And the other one that basically reminds us also is you get a vivid pictures of what happened during the Nazi Germany and other times. I can't remember seeing this kind of pictures in any situation which is done by government forces and done by any civilized society on fellow humans.
Right.
That's basically what it reminds me. Yes.
So Masood, are we letting the drama of the pictures kind of, are we getting carried away with them? Were you there? Did you see the conditions that people were in? Masood.
Yes, well, let me say this. One, that's thinking that we have got thousands of people being held at Kasarani is very, very wrong. And what we do have there is a screening center. where less than 500 people are screened every day and released. Maybe people may not know the dynamics of the operation, because what happens is during the day, people are rounded up and then they are taken to Kasarani for security screening. Immediately the screening is over, people get released. It is not like they are being delayed or they are being held until evening.
So no one's staying overnight. No one's being mistreated in any of those detention areas, as far as you're aware.
There is no detention there, and nobody is being detained. Even as we speak, anybody who is to be detained is either taken to the court for a court process. But there is nobody being detained at Kasarani. I must reiterate that.
Right.
Because actually, there is a law in the country which forbids such type of treatment and acts by the government or any other body for that matter. So at the end of every day, the people who have been screened are either released, or if they are to be taken to the refugee camps, they are being handed over to the DRA for transportation. If they are to be taken to court, they are immediately being taken to respective police stations and then taken to court the next day. And this figure is normally very, very small, less than 20.
So we have people actually who are tweeting in online right now who are disputing essentially what the conditions of the camp look like. Tanya here says there are fainting wives and mothers giving birth in dirty prison cells with no water, food or help. We have Istre here who says hundreds of Somalis have been taken to the camps there for days and cold nights with no food and nothing and are being tortured, she actually adds to that. She went on to say that I have a friend of mine at the camp who's telling me that there is no progress on, but at least they've given them food tonight. So
allow me to say this.
Go ahead.
Particularly for that allegation that there are mothers giving birth there. The third day of the operation, when it started, I personally visited there with the Inspector General of the National Police Service with a few other officials on a security check to ensure that everything is okay. While there, we found one lady who was pregnant and who was in the process of being screened. Luckily, she was cleared, and it is the Inspector General himself who said that transport should be provided for that lady to be released immediately back to her home.
So Masood, are you telling
Another
me that
one was also in the line,
one woman,
and she was released?
Okay,
Sorry?
So Masood, are you telling me that like there was one pregnant woman and one pregnant woman turned in pregnant women are given birth?
It is not true.
Detention.
Where and when?
Right.
Where and when? It's not true.
Sure. So Omar, where were you going to? Go ahead.
It's the
Let me say
government.
something.
It's the government statistics.
Professor, I hear you. I'll come back to you.
It's not, what is happening there is the international community and everybody to see. And why then would you stop the media from going inside there? Why would you then stop the human rights organizations, including the national statutory body, the Kenyan National Human Rights Commission, from going and accessing the people there? It's the government itself that had actually insisted on a number of occasions that the number of people who are held in Kasarani is 3,500, 4,000 something. Those are figures that were given by the government. Now, to come and say that nobody is held in there, I mean, it reminds me of nothing short of what basically used to happen in the last millennium, not in this millennium, right, for God's sake. And the other bit is that no wonder we are right now in the International Criminal Court through none other than our two principals, the president and his deputy. What is happening in Kenya today does not happen in any civilized society anywhere in the world.
All right, so Professor, jump in. What did you want to say?
Let me say something. Kenya is a country. We are not the banana republic. Kenya is governed by law. We have one of the best constitutions in the world today. You know what happened? In fact, all international, human rights organizations are international. They state-funded Kenya National Human Rights Commission, Transparency International, all the human rights groups. And really, they are saying that this would call ethnic profiling. It is very clear when the government mismanagement of counterterrorism. For instance, fighting terrorism can be done very intelligent manner. Let me give you an example. For instance, Andrea in Norway, for instance. Andrea, in fact, launched a terrorist attack in Norway. setting a bomb.
Okay, Professor, I don't want to go to Norway right now because there's so much happening in Kenya now. So let's stick with Kenya because we only have a certain amount of time. Make your point for Kenya, Professor, please.
Let me say, you know what happened today? You know what we have seen and witnessed today in Isli. It's what we call a collective punishment, systematic disregard of international law, detention with a trial. You know what we call extrajudicial killing. That's exactly what is going on. The other thing is, when we disregard, international law, Kenya is a signatory to what they call the Geneva Convention of 1951. Kenya is a signatory of international humanitarian law. We have the best law. So if you don't, if they are being forced purposely disregard the international law.
Okay, all right, Professor. I hear what you're saying. You make a good point. Take a breath. Let us go back to community. Our Kenyan community have so much to say about this story.
They do, and some people are actually not really disputing the fact that these measures seem to be extreme, but they're saying that the context justifies it because the security situation is really bad. Okay. So we have Charles here on Facebook who says this simply had to be done. The grenade attacks were simply too many, and there's a 90% chance that a Somali was involved in them somehow. So my question to you, Masoud, is can you give us a little bit about context of what the security situation currently looks like? Why did this operation even come about to begin with?
Thank you. And even before I go there, allow me also to clarify that we have also organized for structured visits by the media. We have taken the media on more than 3 tours to the area to ensure that they are able to view the process and ensure that they are also able to see these people who are being profiled. So there's nothing to hide. Well, coming back to your question in terms of now the context of the operation, remember, many of us may be aware of the incessant attacks which have been directed at some of our citizens in some parts of the country, Nairobi, Mombasa, Northeastern, and a few other areas. So I think the government decided to be patient and try to use caution and a lot of democracy, a lot of human rights issues to ensure that it addresses this. But at some time, the government felt that enough is enough. People are dying, people are being maimed, businesses are closing down. And that is why the whole idea of Operation Usalama Watch came to be. Operation Usalama Watch is not targeting any ethnic community. It is not targeting any religious organization or institution or body. It is not targeting people from certain areas. It is being done in Nairobi. It is being done in Mombasa. It is being done in Nakuru and all other parts of the country. So let us also be very fair, and I appreciate that this is an undertaking for the betterment of the security of the country.
Mr. Masood, it's common knowledge. It's known by everybody, every Tom and sundry, that even in the other urban settings in the country where they are targeting, you are targeting Somali businessmen, you are targeting peaceful citizens of this country from one ethnic community. Tell me how many non-Somalis are in Kasarani? How many of them have been rounded up in these other places? How many, let's say, Southern Sudanese? We all know that there's an excess of 250,000 Southern Sudanese refugees in the country. And you're not arresting them and taking them anywhere. The profiling is purely and simply against Somalis only. And that also goes with the...
to give some figures.
That also goes, let me just finish. That also goes with the fact that your forces went into Slee, raped women in the early days, robbed them of their own money and their jewelry and everything, possessions that they had. And the people who are in Slee now, you talk about security, of more than 10 people who have been indicted in this country or investigated, taken to court and convicted, none of them is a Somali. They are all from the other 42 or 41 Kenyan tribes. The issue of trying to round up Somalis, refugees or asylum seekers or foreigners from Europe, America and the rest of them who are holding those passports but who are living in Kenya and doing business in Kenya has been something that has always been there in the offing. It was there in January 16th.
So Farah, take a breath because Masood has to be able to respond to you. And there's something that you said that was very specific about police officers going into Eastleigh. This is an area where there's a lot of the Somali community and actually committing crimes there. Masood?
Yeah, let me say this. One, the issue of rapes and robberies. We keep on hearing this over and over again. We have said again that if there are any instances where robberies have been committed by our officers, we have called members of the public to come and report to us. And not only to the police. We also have the Internal Affairs Unit. We have the Independent Policing Oversight Authority. We have the human rights body, the government and the NGO. We have the Office of the Ombudsman. These are just a few of the government machineries where people are at liberty to go and report.
So you're basically saying even if this happened, they have a way of reporting it, but shouldn't it have happened in the first place, Masood?
Let me ask.
Even before we go there, allow me just, please, if you may just allow.
Please, go ahead.
Just to give you some figures. As I give those areas, let me give you a figure here. For example, as at 15th April, we had screened 247 Kenyans, 782 Somalis, 68 Ethiopians, 5 Rwandese, 14 Tanzanians, among others. Look at this. Out of these numbers, out of the 247 Kenyans, 127 were taken to court, 120 were released. Out of the 782 Somalis, 120 were taken to court, 42 were released, 406 were supposed to be in refugee camps and they were taken there. So we are looking at numbers which are very objective. There is no discrimination, there is no victimization here.
All right, let me just play something. Gentlemen, hold tight for a moment. Just take a breath, because I also want to bring in a government voice. This comes from NTV Kenya just a couple of days after Operation Peace started. So this is Joseph Ololenku. He is from, he's a cabinet secretary from the Ministry of Interior. And when people were starting to ask in Kenya, aren't you profiling? Isn't this ethnic profiling? Have a listen to what he said in response.
Remember, these criminal and terrorist activities have killed as many Christians as Muslims. So for somebody to want to insinuate that this is a target on Muslims is short-sighted and is meant to distract the security machinery from doing their work. And I can tell Kenyans, we will not be distracted. And I can also give my word that security in Isili, in this city, in the country, is on good course.
Security is on good course. That's our government voice. Omar, what are you hearing from the community?
We're hearing a lot from community. Actually, we've had dozens of tweets essentially claiming that there's a lot of corruption among the police and that this is a big part of the problem. We touched on that a little bit earlier. We have Ahmed here on Facebook who says if Kenyan police and courts weren't corrupt, they could find the real terrorists and prosecute them instead of extorting money from innocent Kenyans. And we have this video comment from Nairobi. Listen in.
Unless the government addresses the rot within the police force, the corruption in the immigration department, and secures the porous borders in the north of Kenya, I do not think any amount of police soups would bring security to the country or deter terrorists.
So, Moses, given the fact that we're seeing the sentiment all over, essentially, online, we're seeing it all over the place, do you have a sense that this is maybe a real problem that police should be looking deeply into?
I think this is just a sideshow. The real show is that since 2011, we have suffered 80 terrorist attacks from Al-Shabaab. And Al-Shabaab is equal to Al-Qaeda. For me, that is the main story. Everything else is just a distraction. And every time that these attacks have happened, it is always business as usual. The likes of Farah Maalim, we don't hear of them. When Westgate is attacked, you don't hear of Farah Maalim. When terrorists place a bullet on a baby, Satrino Senior, we don't hear of all these people. All of a sudden it's about Somalis and about Israel. And I'm asking, don't we all as Kenyans have the right to live in peace? And when all this was happening, the rights of Farah Maalim were not offering an alternative. What we have had is when we have an operation to flush out Al-Shabaab and their brothers or their masters from Al-Qaeda, is when we hear of people complaining that we are using, unorthodox means. To me, it's all hypocrisy, and a further show that some of these leaders are actually the bigger terrorists.
What's an alternative, Farah?
Let me tell you something, Mr. Kuria.
Professor, hold tight for a moment. Farah, go ahead and make a brief point, and then we'll bring the professor back in.
Can I say, because Mr. Kuria has mentioned my name, Mr. Kuria, much as I would want to really respect you, but you have been extremely dishonest. I have gone on record in Parliament and outside Parliament more than 50, 60 times, trying to address the kind of lapses which are institutional lapses within our own government and structures here.
Right, so
and I've always been calling for
Al-Shabaab. What's an alternative? What's an alternative? How would you suggest that? Go ahead. Time is not our friend today.
The only people who are publicly on the hit list of Al-Shabaab is myself when I was the deputy speaker there, and the former minister for defense, Haji, who are both ethnic Somalis, Kenyans. Nobody else, not the president, not the deputy president, not any other Kenyan. And the information is not from Al-Shabaab, it's from the Kenyan intelligence system itself. What we say is that rot in the police force itself.
All right, so this is what I hear, gentlemen. I'm just gonna interrupt you all because we have time constraints here. So I hear a lot of criticism. I'm not hearing a lot of. Okay, this is a better alternative, Professor. What's a better alternative for fighting that security issue?
Let me say something, Femi.
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, Al-Shabaab is not what we call a Kenyan problem. Al-Shabaab is a regional problem. It's a global problem.
Sure.
For instance, let me ask one question, because Moses Inzala was arrested and charged attack in Garissa. He was not a Somali. Bernard Odua accused of the carrying out a green attack in Isli. All radical youth in Coast province, all of them were non-Somalis. What I'm saying is Al-Shabaab is a global problem. It's a regional problem. It has nothing to do with Kenya. It's up to the regional member states to come together and, in fact, have a strategic counter-terrorist agenda. But what I'm saying is, what we have seen in Isli for the couple of weeks is what we call ethnic profiling. In Isli, Somali's business community, they invested in Isli. Isli alone $1.5 billion US, with transaction of $100 million a month. They transformed Isli into Dubai of Kenya. That's exactly what, some of the observers, some of the political analysts, they are saying this kind of operation is what we call an emerging economic war. Has nothing to do with what you call a terrorism. That's a brain fact. We have to accept that Kenya is not a banana republic. Kenya is governed by law. We have to respect our constitution.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? What I'm going to ask Masood is, what do you call under which constitution now are they carrying out the operation?
All right.
The people are asking.
So, Professor, that question is a great cliffhanger.
Let me finish.
Professor, we're running out of time. We're at the end of the program. So, Professor, you're listening there to Professor Abdul Wahab Sheikh Abdi Samad. He has a lot to say. He's very passionate. You will hear that question that he posed to Masood Mwinyi. He is the spokesperson of the Administration Police of Kenya. They're the paramilitary police that are overseeing Operation Peace. He'll be in our post show. Also, Farah Malim, he's a former Deputy Speaker of Kenya's National Assembly. He will also be in the post show at stream.aljazeera.com. The temperature is rising. The conversation is heating up. Alternatives, though. Of course, we go to our community for those. What do they say?
They do have some suggestions. Chanda here on Facebook says Kenyan security should work in collaboration with Somali leaders in Kenya to recruit Somalis as informants. And we also have Ahmed here who tweeted in saying the government and its intelligence services should first learn how to differentiate between a terrorist and a refugee. Those are some of the comments that are coming in. Farah,
Professor, Masood, do not go away. We are taking you to the post show at stream.aljazeera.com. And if you want to be part of that conversation, #AJStream. Omar is waiting for your tweets. Meanwhile, I have time to tell you about our next program. Actually, there's a little bit of a theme running through this show and the next show. Are the UK's health professionals being turned into government spies? We look at why the National Health Service employees are training to identify potential terrorists. Stay with us. The post show is next at stream.aljazeera.com. Until then, we'll see you online. Thanks for watching. Hello again, this is Femi OK. We're back with the Stream's online post show. Kenya's security crackdown appears to be targeting Somalis. But what do our guests think about that? Professor, forgive me, I interrupted a professor. I'm in trouble. We were literally at the end of the program.
It's okay. Go ahead. Let me ask Masood one question. Masood, are we in what they call a state of emergency? Which law under which where people are asking the constitution, what kind of law we are following? Police force must be law abiding people. So which law now are we following when you are going to have such kind of exercise? The other thing is, which I'm going to add, for instance, in Georgia.
All right, I want to do one question at a time so Masood can actually remember what you have to say. You've asked that question. Masood, go ahead and answer it.
Thank you so much. In fact, I will not even answer one. I will answer two. Because one, he has asked, which law are we using? Are we in a state of emergency, in other words, or something? No, we are not. This operation firmly falls within the mandate of the police service. Section 27 and 26 of the National Police Service Act 2011 perfectly give the Deputy Inspector General AP Service and the Deputy Inspector General Kenya Police Service to undertake routine security operations for the maintenance of law and order, among other things. So this is an operation which is perfectly covered within the law. But you ask also a very pertinent question. What are the solutions which we are not addressing ourselves to? And allow me to say, the solution is to appreciate that we all need security and we must also all partake in securing our country. The people who perpetrate criminal activities in our country, many of them may be known to us, or we may indirectly be aware of them. Can we begin exposing them? Can we begin alienating ourselves from insecurity and elements of insecurity in the society? Yes, we can. That is the way forward, and that is the solution.
Omar.
So we have a lot of people who are actually commenting on...
Professor, just give us a moment because we have to share the conversation with our online community as well.
Yeah, we have a lot of people who are actually discussing the extent to which Somalis do feel like they're at home in Kenya. We have a couple of comments here. Kelachi says, it is a delicate situation. The influx of Somalis is something that has to be curtailed. So there is this view of Somalis as kind of being an external factor. But we have Rabah here who says, as clearly highlighted, Somalis are tired of being treated as second-class citizens. We are part and parcel of Kenya. And there's also this Tumblr here, Kenya, I am not a terrorist, which you can see here on my screen. Lots of pictures that are very, very interesting of Somalis who are commenting on it. I tweeted out one of
those pictures on my Twitter feed today, and it actually got a load of retweets. It obviously was a very sore point with a lot of Kenya Somalis or Somali Kenyans who felt very passionate about that.
Clearly is, which actually makes me curious. My question is to Farah Muallim. The extent to which that division, is that something that is just happening right now as a result of everything that is happening with this operation, or is that a pre-existing feeling that there are many Somalis in Kenya who just don't feel alienated to some extent from broader society?
Fairly, right from the time we got independence, it's always been business as usual to attack Somali's economic base. I must tell you that almost all the major urban settings in this country 150 years, 140 years ago were started by Somali traders. So Somalis have been people who have always been seen and viewed as economically better off than the other Kenyans. Right from the time when the first president took over power in 1963, he rounded up all Somali businessmen in all the major urban settings in this country and did economic mayhem on them. This has been always the every few years. Then we had the massacre in Wagala, we had the Garissa massacre, we had the Malkamari massacre. We probably had 5, 6, 7 massacres carried out by the government forces itself. This time around, Femi, let me tell you one thing. Nobody is more interested in securing this country's security, more so from terrorists than the Somali Kenyans. But the fact of the matter is, I don't think the government has any intention of dealing with terrorism in this case here. Because for over 100 incidents, not one single one of them was successfully investigated by the security machinery, prosecuted and convicted.
All right, so Farah, take a breath there, because Masood has to come in when you say something like that. Masood? Not any of the investigations for terrorism, none of them actually came to a positive result?
Involving a Somali, yes.
Okay, all right, I hear the clarification. Masood?
Allow me to say this. There are so many incidents which have been successfully prosecuted investigated for that matter. But also, let me add something. We have so many Somalis in our country, Kenyan Somalis and even Somali Somalis. Let us look at the Somali community, for those who know Kenya very well, in Bungoma, Western Kenya. These people are there and they're Somalis. Nobody is going after them because there is peace there. The area has just been infiltrated by undesirable elements of the society. In Nairobi, where we have Kenyan Somalis, incidentally, we also have people who are also taking advantage of the Somali community in Nairobi to invite to visit mayhem on innocent people. And that is where the government comes in.
What is the proof, Mahima? What is the proof, Mwinyi? Show me one case in which you saw a Kenyan Somali in Isli who has taken advantage of the community in that place and who has been found out and finally found to be a terrorist. Show us one. Tell me one.
And we are not talking about Kenyan Somalis. We are talking about criminal elements there. Remember, it is not necessarily a Somali who is a criminal.
You are a policeman. You cannot just say criminal elements. You have a work to do. You have something to show. You have a proof to show to the world. You don't have a single proof. The only proof you have is that collective victimization and the blanket. It's only politicians who can talk and say this community is bad, that community is bad. You are an officer. You should show and show facts. Where are the facts? We have Luyas who have been convicted. We have Kikuis who have been convicted. We have Kambas, we have Luos, we have Luyas. Show me the Somali who has been convicted of terrorism in this country.
All right, so these are ethnic groups that Ferrari is just reeling off there. So he's saying it's not just a particular community, it's some other ethnic groups as well. Okay, yes. So let me just check in to see Masood. So this Operation Peace, would you say it's been successful so far? The criticism for it is extreme, do you not think?
You are breaking. Please come again, you're breaking.
Yes, Operation Peace so far, would you say it's been a success, or did you not see how much pushback you would get from the Somali community and also basically from other Kenyans who feel like maybe human rights are not being observed?
I think one of the success factor in this operation is the calmness we have been able to achieve since we started. Because all those incidents have been totally curtailed. Since we started, we have not had a bad incident, including the Easter holidays, where people expected a lot of problems in so many areas. It has been calm. But another area of success is now the goodwill, where many Kenyans are saying, indeed, this is the right thing to do. Remember, we have extended the operation outside Nairobi. We are going to Thika, Ruiru, we are going to Mwingi, all those areas outside Nairobi. And all these areas, we are not targeting a single entity.
Omar.
So, Professor Abdul Wahab, I have a video comment here that I would like you to take a quick listen to. Listen to this.
I think Kenya needs to do a couple of things. One is to state very clearly how long they are going to stay in Somalia, because there is direct correlation between the number of attacks in Kenya as well as and Kenya's intervention. Number two is following the money trail. Kenya needs to follow where Al-Shabaab gets its funding, whether it's from businessmen or the kind of business that they do. Those are two things that are very important. And number three, and finally, Kenya needs to build strong relations with Kenyan Somalis, because antagonizing them is not going to be very helpful at all.
Professor, to what extent do you think building that closer relationship with the Somali community is important just for the security aspect of trying to secure the country in Kenya?
You know, what I'm saying basically is the Kenyan, government must address the underlying grievances of Somali community. You have to gain the minds and hearts of the people. Let the people consider policemen as a friend, not as an enemy, so that they can share information, so that they can work hand in hand with police force. So that's what the fact was lacking for up to now. The other thing I'm going to say is the Kenyan police force. We have to transform into professional police force. For instance, in Georgia, it has taken 5 years to transform what had been corrupt, brutal, and highly politicized police force into what you call professional police force. We have to address the underlying grievances, unemployment, uneducated youth, and so that's what they call a breeding ground for radicalization. The other thing is, jointly we can fight together against Al-Shabaab. No question about that. Al-Shabaab, if we are together, we can defeat them. But unfortunately, if you are doing what they call ethnic profiling, if you are doing what they call collective punishment, if you are systematically disregard of international law, that's what they call what do you call a breeding ground for radicalization.
All right, we hear you,
What
Professor.
I'm
we hear you very clearly. You make an excellent point. I'm hearing some alternatives. I'm hearing that Masood feels that this operation piece is going well. I hear exactly the cynicism that is coming from Farah. Moses had some fiery points to make. We lost him during our conversation. This conversation is going online at #AJStream to be continued. On the next programme, are the UK's health professionals being turned into government spies? We look at why National Health Service employees are training to identify potential terrorists. More on that tomorrow. Until then, thank you to all our guests. Thank you for watching. See you online.